Welcome back to Boilers and Beyond. I'm Jordan Jones. By the time you're listening to this, a new era will be underway in college athletics. Southern Cal, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington will officially be members of the Big Ten. Texas and Oklahoma will be members of the SEC. Colorado, Utah, Arizona, and Arizona State have fled for the Big 12. While Cal, Stanford, and Southern Methodist are now members of the ACC. Yes, the Atlantic Coast Conference has two teams from California and another from Dallas, Texas. Today, we're going to focus more on the Big Ten's expansion and what it means for Purdue and how that will impact Purdue in year one of the 18-team Big Ten. We'll look at that before touching on a number of news stories from the past week related to Purdue sports, most notably the selection of Zach Edey in the NBA draft. But if you don't already, be sure to follow the show on Twitter, @BoilersBeyond. Plenty to talk about there. You can always send questions in for the show or episode ideas to me on Twitter, @BoilersBeyond, or via email, boilersandbeyondpod@gmail.com. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. We are about a month away from the Countdown to Kickoff series getting underway. There's going to be a lot to talk about here as we get geared up for Ryan Walters' second season in West Lafayette. So be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss a thing. But the news of the week is sort of a formality at this point, but effective July 1st, as I record this, a little over 2 hours away from it becoming official, the Big Ten becomes an 18-team league, where USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington officially become Big Ten members. To this point in the history of college athletics, this is the most dramatic conference realignment move in the history of college sports. You have had big conference realignment. You have had the Nebraska and Colorado leaving the Big 12 felt huge. Maryland and Rutgers joining the Big 10. Texas A&M and Missouri joining the SEC. But nothing like this. Nothing has exploded the landscape of college athletics like this, ultimately leading to the demise of the Pac-12, a longtime conference that is now no more. It is a major shift in the sport, but what does it all mean? What changes the most? If you ask me, this changes for football more than anything. Now, reminder that all of these moves are made for football. There is value to basketball a little bit, but any move that is made due to the almighty dollar all comes back to football. That's where the money goes. That's where the money comes from. All of that TV money, the vast majority of it, is for football. So when you look at these four schools coming in, you have Oregon entering the Big Ten as an instant Big Ten title contender. That's a great program. It recruits at a really high level. Dan Lanning is an excellent coach. Certainly out there you have really nice backing for the NIL world thanks to Phil Knight. That's something you can't really just leave out. That's a huge plus for Oregon. Things are going really well out there. That's a really good football program, and one that it wouldn't shock me to see Oregon playing for a Big Ten title this year. USC may not be operating at its peak level right now. A disappointing year last year for USC, but it has a ceiling that very few programs in America can match. We've seen USC when it's rolling at peak efficiency. Most recently, under Pete Carroll, the Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush, Lendale White teams. USC was the best team in the country for a 3-year span or so. USC has that capability. Now, it's if you really get into the nitty gritty, some of the details out there right now are a little questionable, but Lincoln Riley's established himself as an elite offensive head coach, and that alone is going to win USC a pretty good amount of games. USC is going to be someone that you have to worry about on any time you take the field against them, because they will be able to put up points in such a hurry. And if they start recruiting at a little higher level and shore up the defense, USC can be a Big Ten title contender on an annual basis. You have Washington, who just played for a national championship. Now, to be fully fair, that took a whole lot going their way. Some unusual circumstances, COVID year, very senior-laden roster, some close wins throughout the year, winning a ton of one-score games. But, hey, it all counts the same. That's a program that can compete at a pretty high level. Washington cares. Washington wants to be good. And I think you're going to see Washington be a solid player in that middle of the pack of the Big Ten. And when things go right, like so many of those other schools, it can sneak up maybe into that top 3, top 4 of the Big Ten. I don't think UCLA is on the level of the other 3, especially where it stands right now, but there's a respectable ceiling to that program. We've seen UCLA be all right in recent memory. Is that going to be the case right away? I personally doubt it, but you never know. With the portal these days, you can flip things pretty quickly. Long story short, though, with these 4 additions, 3 of which have really high aspirations, 3 of which have clear college football playoff aspirations. It's not fun to hear, but life gets way more difficult for teams like Purdue. Purdue's got to stay competitive on the gridiron. All of those schools do. Purdue, Illinois, Minnesota, Michigan State, Maryland. These schools have to be competitive in football. You can't become the runt of the litter in the Big Ten. You can't be the team that the big boys just absolutely beat down on, and then it trickles down to you getting beat down on by, number 6 through 12 in the conference. That can't happen. I don't think it will. I think Purdue's in an okay spot here, but football is the most important sport for any athletic department, even at basketball-first schools like Purdue. You have to compete in football. And as we move into the new Big Ten, it's going to be really interesting to see how well Purdue can take its approach, of blending traditional high school recruiting with the transfer portal, how that mix works to be competitive, because Purdue needs to get it right. It is not something where I think you have a ton of time to tinker with over the years. Purdue's got to be competitive pretty early on in this. On the basketball side of things, look, I don't think a lot changes. I really don't. What Purdue is doing as a basketball program is remarkably consistent. It's remarkably repeatable. It is very, almost old school at this point, which is crazy to say, but I don't think a whole lot changes for Purdue with these 4 schools joining the league. Now, it does make winning the Big Ten a more challenging feat for multiple reasons. You have 4 teams coming in that should be able to compete at a solid level. UCLA may be a shell of its former self, but it's still a storied program that has upside to it. It's had some good teams in recent memory. Back in the mid-late 2000s, you had the Final Four team with Russell Westbrook and Darren Collison. Lonzo Ball's team was pretty good. Tiger Campbell's crews a few years ago were solid, but it's not a great program anymore. Mick Cronin's a solid coach. It has a ceiling there, but I don't know where it's at right now. Eric Musselman, very good hire for Southern Cal. He may be crazy. He may seem to have a bit of a screw loose, but he's effective. The guy wins games. USC is going to get better. Oregon and Washington are in a little bit of a different spot, but I think they're both going to be able to be at least competing for tourney bids. Dana Altman, a very good coach at Oregon. Again, no shortage of money out there. Washington goes and gets Danny Sprinkle, a hot shot coach from Utah State. And if you play the NIL card, that great Asabar deal sure makes it seem like Washington has some money to go out and spend. I think in addition to the strength of these programs, what's going to make the Big Ten championship really different is the strength of schedule disparities. Because schools are only playing 3 teams in the league twice, and some of those are rivalry protected, some of them aren't. But when you're only getting 3 double plays, and I don't have Purdue's off the top of my head, but if you look at next year and you're a school that gets Purdue, Illinois, and Indiana as your 3 plays, that's brutal. The teams you play twice. But if you get Northwestern, Minnesota, and Penn State, then you're the big winner. That's a massive, massive difference. So some of that disparity, I think, will be very important to watch in Big Ten basketball races. And while I don't do a ton of non-revenue sport coverage on this show, that's going to be a mess with all of this. With football and basketball, I don't think it's a huge deal. Basketball, you can finagle travel partners well enough where you do 2 games during your trip, and it makes it feasible. I don't think that's terrible. Football, obviously, is fine. It's 1 game. It's a Saturday. That's easy enough. It's just a longer flight. I don't know what you do with these non-revenue sports, and I haven't paid enough attention to see what volleyball is doing, but are we really going to get to the point where for softball, you're flying Purdue out to UCLA for a 3-game weekend series and then flying them back? Are you going to do that for cross-country meets or tennis matches? I don't know how that works. With the House settlement and all, with these conferences getting bigger, it is not a good time for non-revenue sports. I don't have any inside information on that. I can just tell you from staring at this objectively, it's not a good time for non-revenue sports. In a few years, I'll be very curious to see what things look like there. After the break, going to get to a few bullet points from the week, notably Zach Edey getting drafted. This episode is brought to you by me. Yes, myself. When I'm not watching sports, or more accurately, talking about them, I'm talking insurance with the people of Indiana. As an agent with Indiana Farm Bureau Insurance, I want to help you protect what you've worked hard to achieve. From home and auto to life and business insurance, I'm here to help you. Give me a call at 317-692-7463 or email me at jordan.jones@infarmbureau.com, and let's protect you from life's everyday risks. So last week, Zach Edey goes 9th overall in the NBA draft to the Memphis Grizzlies. Admittedly, I don't follow the NBA in enough detail to reasonably comment on the fit in Memphis, so I'm not even going to try. It wouldn't be fair to the Grizzlies. It wouldn't be fair to Zach Edey. Good for him, nonetheless. Good for him. The conversation around him has been absurd for so long now, and I know it will continue to be, because for some reason he's become a polarizing figure, even though there's really no reason for that. He's proven doubters wrong every step of the way. And I'm not one of those, flex on the haters, all of that. That's not me. But Zach Edey has gotten better and better every year and improved on his weaknesses every year. He's going to get a shot in the NBA, and that's all he needs. I expect he's going to make the most of it. He has a competitive streak to him that I don't think is all that common. he is still getting better. It's the weird phenomenon with him that he's a 2-time National Player of the Year for the first time in 40 years, but he's also still in his first decade playing basketball. He's not your classic guy who started playing, travel basketball when he was 7 and shooting hoops at his grandparents' barn when he was 3. That's not Zach Edey. So I think there's real room for him to grow and continue to get better. Is he ever going to become a star in the NBA? I have no idea. That'd be a lot to ask. But I think he can be a real role player in the NBA. If he can't, it probably says more about the product on the floor than it does Zach Edey, because he's a truly great basketball player. There should be room for him in the NBA. That's what it comes down to. I know it's not been a great stretch for Purdue guys in the NBA recently. Carson Edwards washed out pretty quick. Vince Edwards didn't stick around long. Obviously, Caleb Swanigan, an incredibly sad story, but didn't go great for him. I think this is going to be a little different. I do think Zach Edey's going to have a nice NBA career. It's going to be interesting to see how quickly that gets to that point and how high his ceiling gets. Tom Dienhart over at goldenblack.com had a headline this week that Purdue football season ticket sales are the program's best since 2008, as over 40,000 season tickets have been sold. One thing to note, that includes nearly 10,000 students into that total, but nonetheless, roughly 2/3 of the stadium is sold of season tickets and is ready to go for this year. This is a big year for Ryan Walters. There's plenty of more time to talk about this, and goodness will we ever. But I think for the most part, fans wrote off the tough 4-8 season to start his tenure. I think fans wrote that off, and whether it's justifying it, whether it's, just excusing it, whatever it may be, I think fans are very okay with that. But that doesn't last forever. The grace period is not infinite. There is a point where the results have to show. Now, I'm not sitting here saying if things don't go well in year 2 that, he's getting the pink slip. I don't think that's true. But Purdue needs to take a step in the right direction. Purdue needs to keep the momentum rolling in a positive direction. The schedule is daunting. It is not an easy schedule. I was talking to some friends about this. God, if you look at the games that you circle as almost an auto win and almost an auto loss, you're probably looking at 1-4, and that's not a comfortable spot to be in. But Purdue has to find a way to make this a positive year 2 and to continue building momentum into year 3. It's really cool to sell that many tickets. It is. Vibes are high around Purdue as a whole. The school as a whole has been really doing some nice things for the better part of a decade now. Purdue's got to continue building on that on the football field. Purdue fans started showing back up for the Jeff Brom era. You saw attendance. It really started to dip during the Danny Hope era. It fell off a cliff during the Darrell Hazel era. You've got to keep a good enough product on the field that doesn't happen again. That's a really tough spot to be in. You just can't do it. And then finally, the last headline, Purdue finalized its 2025 football non-conference schedule, with Southern Illinois being added to the schedule. The 2025 non-conference slate looks like this. Purdue opens up with Ball State at home, hosts Southern Illinois, and then travels to Notre Dame. This is progress for something more achievable for Purdue. You all who have listened to this show for more than a few episodes know how I feel about the way Purdue football has scheduled in recent years. There is no incentive to a difficult schedule. I personally don't even believe the argument that it makes your team much better, to be honest, but to each their own. Purdue has not gone undefeated in the non-conference since 2007. An almost unbelievable stat when you only play 3 or 4 of those games a year. That trip to Notre Dame is still going to be quite difficult. I would not expect to win that game really ever. Purdue hasn't won up there a whole lot, but the other 2 should be wins, and that's a step in the right direction. 2-1 is a whole heck of a lot better than 1-2. Purdue found that out the hard way last year, and we'll see what Purdue can do this year with a very intriguing swing game at Oregon State. It's going to be interesting, but that's all wrapped up for next year. A little bit shorter of a show today. I apologize for that. We're kind of in the strange part of the calendar here. There's only so much to talk about. We did recruiting last week, did this. Next week we'll talk about some postseason stuff for football and basketball, but send over any questions, send over any ideas, things you want me to talk about. You can send that to me on Twitter @BoilersBeyond or via email boilersandbeyondpod@gmail.com. Again, we'll be back here next week. Until then, enjoy your 4th of July week. God bless the United States, and I'll talk to you next week.